Welcome to Lore of the Rings, where we explore the secret paths of Middle-earth and share the stories Tolkien never told. Before we dive in, take a moment to tell us in the comments where you're tuning in from and whether this tale has found you by day or by night. There is a sound that haunts the memory of Middle-earth, a horn cry that echoed through the trees of Amon Hen, desperate and defiant, calling for aid that would never arrive in time. The great horn of Gondor, passed down through generations of stewards, blown by Boromir, son of Denethor, in his final moments. We know how that story ends. We have seen the hero fall, 3 arrows in his chest, his oath broken, his redemption paid for in blood. But what if the horn's cry did not fade into silence? What if, in those terrible moments when the Uruk-hai closed in with their crude blades and savage voices, something changed? What if Aragorn had run faster through the trees, or Legolas's arrows had found their marks with swifter precision? What if Boromir, the proud captain of the White Tower, had survived the ambush that was meant to be his death? Close your eyes and imagine it now. The forest of Parth Galen lies scattered with the bodies of Uruks, their black blood staining the moss and stone. Boromir slumps against an ancient oak, his breath ragged, his armor pierced but not fatally. Aragorn kneels before him, pressing cloth against the wounds, while Legolas stands watch with bow drawn. The hobbits are gone, Merry and Pippin taken. Frodo fled across the river with Sam. The Fellowship is shattered, but Boromir still breathes. His eyes, gray as winter storms, flicker open. Pain clouds them, yes, but also something darker, the shadow of what he tried to do. The memory of Frodo's terrified face as Boromir reached for the ring, his voice pleading, his hands grasping. The madness that seized him on that hill, the whispers that promised salvation for Gondor if only he could take the ring, wield it, turn it against the enemy. He remembers. And in surviving, he must carry that memory forward. Aragorn's face is stern but not without compassion. He has seen men fall to lesser temptations than the One Ring. He knows the burden Boromir bears is not merely his wounds, but his shame. Yet here, in this altered thread of fate, there is no tearful confession, no peaceful passing with honor restored. There is only the brutal truth of survival and the question of what comes next. Boromir's hand moves to his chest, feeling the torn mail, the bruised flesh beneath. He should be dead. By all rights of war and fate, he should have fallen here, joining the long line of Gondorian heroes who gave their lives in hopeless defense. But he has not fallen. The horn's echo still hangs in the air, unanswered but not silenced. And so we must ask ourselves, what does it mean for a man to survive his destined death? What does it mean when redemption is no longer a final act, but a path that must be walked through all the days that follow? For Boromir, survival is not mercy. It is a harder test than any he has faced. Aragorn helps him to his feet. They have no time to linger. The enemy is everywhere, and the Fellowship's mission, the mission Boromir nearly betrayed, continues without them. Frodo bears the ring toward Mordor, and there is nothing they can do now but trust in the courage of hobbits and the wisdom of an old wizard's plan. But as Boromir steadies himself, leaning on his sword, a thought takes root in his mind. It is a thought born of pride and pain, of love for his city and fear for its future. He has seen the ring. He has felt its power. He knows what it could do in the right hands, in his hands, wielded not for domination but for defense, for the salvation of the White City that even now stands besieged by shadow. The ring's voice has not left him. It never truly leaves anyone who hears it. Legolas glances at Aragorn, his keen eyes reading the unspoken question. What do we do with him? Can he be trusted? Should they bind him, guard him, treat him as a man compromised by the enemy's influence? Or do they honor the warrior he has been, the countless battles he has fought, the loyalty he has shown to Gondor if not to the Fellowship? Aragorn makes his choice. He clasps Boromir's shoulder, a gesture of brotherhood, though his gaze remains watchful. They will go north, pursue the Uruk-hai, attempt to rescue Merry and Pippin. And Boromir will come with them, not as a prisoner, but as a companion still, though the trust between them is cracked like thin ice over a dark river. As they move through the forest, Boromir's thoughts turn homeward. Minas Tirith rises in his mind, white towers gleaming under the sun, banners streaming in the wind. His father waits there, Denethor the steward, proud and grim, consumed by visions in the Palantir. His brother Faramir holds the line at Osgiliath, facing endless sorties from Mordor's forces. His people look to the horizon, waiting for the darkness to break over them like a wave. He should be there, not chasing orcs through foreign lands, not following a ranger who claims a crown, not serving a quest that would destroy the one weapon that might save them all. But he is here. Alive, breathing, and the weight of that survival presses down on him like a stone. If Boromir had lived, would the ring have found its true champion or its deadliest servant? To understand what Boromir's survival might mean, we must first understand what he is and what he carries within him. He is not merely a soldier or a captain. He is the heir to a line of rulers who have held the throne of Gondor in trust for thousands of years, waiting for a king who might never return. The blood of Númenor flows through him, though diluted by the ages, and with it comes both nobility and peril. The stewards of Gondor were never meant to rule. They were appointed as caretakers, regents who would govern in the absence of the king. But as centuries passed and no king came, the stewards became lords in all but name. They wielded power, commanded armies, made laws, and defended the realm against the shadow in the east. And slowly, over generations, they began to see the throne not as something held in trust, but as something owed. Denethor II, Boromir's father, is perhaps the greatest and most tragic of all the stewards. He is a man of immense wisdom and strength, a scholar of lore and a strategist without peer. But he is also consumed by pride and despair. He has gazed into the Palantir of Minas Tirith, the seeing stone, and through it he has wrestled with Sauron himself for knowledge. He has seen the vast armies of Mordor, the endless tide of orcs and men, the darkness spreading across the world. And he has concluded that there is no hope, only the choice of how to meet the end. Into this house of shadow and fading glory, Boromir was born. He was raised to be Gondor's champion, trained from boyhood in the arts of war, taught to see himself as the shield of his people. Where his younger brother Faramir was drawn to learning and the old tales, Boromir was shaped into a weapon, proud, unyielding, fierce in his love for the White City. And yet, for all his strength, he was also taught to fear. Fear that Gondor would fall. Fear that the line of stewards would end in ruin. Fear that all his father's sacrifices, all the blood spilled defending the walls of Minas Tirith, would be for nothing. This fear became the soil in which the ring's temptation took root. Boromir believes in action. He believes in the sword, in the strength of men, in holding the line no matter the cost. He does not trust in quests or wizards or the uncertain valor of halflings. When he rode north to Rivendell, answering the summons of a dream, he came seeking a weapon, the legendary blade Narsil, reforged, or some other tool of power that might turn the tide of war. What he found instead was a plan to destroy the ring, to cast it into the fires of Mount Doom and unmake Sauron's power forever. To Boromir, this seemed like madness. Why destroy a weapon when you could wield it? Why throw away the one thing that might save Gondor, that might allow men to stand against the Dark Lord as equals? He did not understand, or perhaps he understood too well, that the ring could never be wielded for good. That its power was Sauron's power, and anyone who claimed it would become a new Dark Lord in time. This was the wisdom of Gandalf and Elrond, the lesson learned from Isildur's failure. But wisdom is cold comfort to a man who watches his homeland burn. So Boromir joined the Fellowship, and he marched south with them, and all the while the ring's voice grew louder in his mind. It promised him the strength to save his father, to reclaim Osgiliath, to break the siege of Minas Tirith and drive Sauron's forces back into the abyss. It promised him glory and victory and the gratitude of his people. It promised him everything he had ever wanted. And in a moment of weakness, he tried to take it. Now, in this timeline where he survives, he must reckon with that moment. He must live with the knowledge of what he became, even if only for a few terrible minutes. The other members of the Fellowship will remember. Frodo will remember. And Boromir himself will carry the scar of it, deeper than any blade wound. But there is something else as well, a flicker of defiance, a stubborn ember of the man he was before the ring's corruption. He is still Boromir, son of Denethor, captain of the White Tower, defender of Gondor. He has faced orcs and trolls and the Nazgul themselves. He will not let one moment of weakness define him. As he travels with Aragorn and Legolas, pursuing the Uruks who have taken Merry and Pippin, he makes a silent vow. He will return to Minas Tirith. He will stand beside his father and his brother. He will fight in the war that is coming, and he will prove that he is more than his failure. He will show them all that Gondor's strength does not lie in magic rings or ancient prophecies, but in the courage of men who refuse to yield. But even as he makes this vow, the memory of the ring lingers, a whisper at the edge of his thoughts, a shadow that will not fade. He lived, but the ring had already claimed part of his soul. There are wounds that bleed, and there are wounds that fester in silence. The arrows that pierced Boromir's armor at Amon Hen will heal in time, stitched and bandaged by Aragorn's skilled hands, tended with Athelas and the lore of the Dunedain. But the wound the ring left upon his mind, that is a different kind of injury altogether. The One Ring does not merely tempt. It does not simply whisper and retreat. It burrows into the heart like a worm into fruit, finding the softest places, the secret fears and desperate hopes that a person keeps hidden even from themselves. For Boromir, the ring found fertile ground. It found a man who loved his city more than his own life, who would do anything to protect it, who could not bear the thought of standing idle while Gondor burned. And so the ring showed him visions. It painted pictures in his mind of what could be. He saw himself returning to Minas Tirith not as a member of a failed fellowship, but as a savior bearing the ultimate weapon. He saw himself standing on the walls of the White City, the ring upon his finger, and with a word and a gesture, scattering Sauron's armies like leaves before a storm. He saw his father's face alight with pride, his brother's awe, his people's cheering voices lifting his name to the heavens. He saw himself as the hero Gondor needed, the hero he always wanted to be. But beneath those visions, there were others darker, more honest. He saw the ring consuming him, changing him, twisting his love for Gondor into a tyrant's hunger for domination. He saw himself becoming a mirror of Sauron, a dark lord clad in white, ruling not for the good of his people, but for the sake of power itself. He saw Minas Tirith transformed into a fortress of dread, its banners black, its streets silent with fear. These visions came in dreams, in the quiet moments when the fellowship rested, in the stillness of the morning watch. And Boromir pushed them away, telling himself they were lies, tricks of the enemy meant to weaken his resolve. But they left their mark nonetheless. Now, as he travels with Aragorn and Legolas through the plains of Rohan, those visions return with renewed force. Every night when he closes his eyes, he sees the ring. He remembers how it looked on Frodo's chest, hanging from its chain, so small and unassuming, yet radiating a presence that filled the air like the scent of burning metal. He remembers the overwhelming urge to reach out, to take it, to claim it as his own. And he wonders, if the ring were before him again, would he be strong enough to resist? Aragorn watches him carefully. The ranger is no fool. He knows the signs of the ring's influence. He has seen what it did to Bilbo, the way it clung to the old hobbit even after 60 years. He has heard Gandalf speak of its corruption, how it breaks the minds of even the wise and the strong. And he knows that Boromir, for all his valor, is vulnerable. But Aragorn also knows something else, that a man is more than his worst moment. He remembers Boromir's courage at Moria, the way he carried Merry and Pippin through the snow when they could not walk. He remembers Boromir's laughter in Lothlorien, his stories of Gondor's glory, his genuine devotion to his people. There is good in him still, a core of honor that the ring has not fully destroyed. The question is whether that core will hold. They find the trail of the Uruk-hai easily enough, a company of 30 or more, moving swiftly toward Isengard. The signs of their passage are brutal: trampled earth, discarded equipment, the occasional splash of black blood where one of the creatures fell behind and was slain by its fellows. Orcs have no loyalty to weakness. Boromir pushes himself hard on the pursuit, harder than his wounds should allow. Pain flares with every step, but he ignores it, driven by a need to prove himself, to atone for his failure. If he can rescue Merry and Pippin, if he can do this one thing right, perhaps it will balance the scales. Perhaps it will erase the memory of Frodo's terrified eyes as he fled. But as they run, covering mile after mile across the grasslands of Rohan, Boromir's thoughts spiral inward. He thinks of Frodo and Sam, somewhere far to the south and east, making their way toward Mordor with the ring. Two small hobbits against the entire might of the Dark Lord. The thought is absurd. They will never make it. They will be captured or killed or lost in the wilderness. And the ring will fall into Sauron's hands and all will be lost, unless someone else takes it first. The thought comes unbidden, and Boromir hates himself for thinking it. But once it arrives, it will not leave. What if there were another way? What if someone strong, someone trained in war, someone who truly understands what is at stake, were to take the ring before Sauron could claim it? Not to use it for domination, but to wield it one final time against the enemy, and then destroy it before its corruption could take full hold. It is a desperate thought, a foolish thought, but it is also seductive. Because deep down, Boromir still believes that the ring could be used for good, at least for a little while. He believes that he could be strong enough to resist it long enough to save Gondor. He believes that the risk is worth taking. Aragorn calls a halt at midday. They have been running since dawn, and even the elf's stamina has limits. They rest briefly, chewing on Lemba's bread, the way bread of the elves that sustains the body but never quite satisfies. Boromir sits apart, staring toward the east, toward the dark line of mountains where Mordor lies hidden. Legolas speaks quietly to Aragorn in Elvish, but Boromir's ears catch a few words. "Corruption, Shadow, watch him. They are talking about him, debating whether he can be trusted. The realization stings, but he cannot fault them for it. He knows what he tried to do. He knows the darkness that still clings to him. But he also knows this: he is not beyond redemption. Not yet. When they resume the chase, Boromir makes a decision. He will not seek the ring again. He will not let its whispers guide his actions. When this pursuit is done, when Merry and Pippin are safe, he will leave Aragorn and return to Gondor. He will fight the war that is coming, and he will do it without the ring, without any weapon but his sword and his courage. It is the only path left to him now. The path of the warrior, not the king or the conqueror. The path of a man who knows he has failed, but who refuses to let that failure be his end. Yet even as he makes this resolution, the ring's voice echoes faintly in the back of his mind, patient and eternal. "You will return to me," it seems to say. "You will always return." He lived, but the ring had already claimed part of his soul. The Battle of the Hornburg changes everything. Boromir stands upon the deeping wall as dawn breaks over the mountains, and he sees the tide of orcs retreat before the charge of Gandalf the White and the Rohirrim. He has fought through the night, his sword slick with black blood, his body battered but unbroken. Aragorn stands beside him, and together they watch as the forces of Isengard are driven into the forest of Huorns, where ancient wrath awaits them. It is a victory, hard-won and bitter, but a victory nonetheless. Yet Boromir feels no joy. His mind is already turning south, toward the White City, toward the war that he knows is coming. Rohan has been saved, but Gondor still stands alone against the darkness. After the battle, as the survivors tend to their wounded and burn the bodies of the orcs, Boromir approaches Aragorn. The two men stand apart from the others, speaking in low voices. "I am leaving," Boromir says simply. Aragorn is not surprised. He has seen the restlessness in Boromir, the way his gaze constantly turns south. To Minas Tirith. Where else? Boromir's voice is rough with exhaustion. "My city needs me. My father needs me. I have been away too long, chasing a quest that is no longer mine to pursue." "The quest continues," Aragorn says quietly. "Frodo and Sam still carry the ring toward Mordor. We must trust in them, and we must do what we can to draw Sauron's eye away from their path. Then you continue the quest your way, and I will continue at mine." Boromir meets Aragorn's gaze steadily. "Gondor will fight. With or without a king, with or without the ring destroyed, we will fight, and I will be there when the blow falls." There is a long silence between them. Then Aragorn extends his hand. "Go with honor, Boromir, son of Denethor. May your sword never fail you." Boromir clasps his hand, and for a moment the shadow that has lain between them since Amon Hen seems to lift. "And may yours lead you to the throne you were born to claim." They part as brothers in arms, if not in purpose, and Boromir takes a horse from the stables of Rohan and rides south, alone, through the lands of Gondor toward the White City. The journey is long and fraught with danger. The roads are no longer safe. Orc bands roam freely, and the servants of Mordor have grown bold. But Boromir is a son of Gondor, and he knows these lands as he knows his own heartbeat. He rides swiftly, avoiding the enemy where he can, cutting through them when he cannot. His sword, still notched from the battle at Amon Hen, drinks deep of black blood. And as he rides, he thinks of what he will say to his father. Denethor has long since given up hope. Boromir knows this, though he has never admitted it aloud. His father gazes into the Palantir and sees only Sauron's strength, only the darkness closing in. He has become convinced that Gondor's fall is inevitable, that all they can do is die with dignity. It is this despair that makes Denethor dangerous, not cruelty, not malice, but the absolute certainty that there is no hope. But Boromir brings a different message. He brings news of the Fellowship, of the heir of Isildur who lives and fights, of the quest to destroy the ring. He brings word that the free peoples are not yet defeated, that battles can still be won, that defiance still has meaning. He brings himself alive, when he should have died, carrying the weight of his failure but also the determination to make amends. When he finally crests the hill and sees Minas Tirith rising before him, its 7 levels gleaming white in the sun, he feels something break open in his chest. It is not quite joy, not quite relief. It is something deeper, a recognition of home, of belonging, of purpose. He rides through the gates and the people stare in shock. Boromir, son of the steward, who left months ago on a mysterious errand north and was thought lost or dead. Boromir, their champion, returned at last. Word spreads through the city like wildfire, and by the time he reaches the citadel and the tower of Ecthelion, a crowd has gathered, murmuring his name. Denethor waits for him in the Hall of the Kings, seated on the steward's chair beneath the marble figure of a crowned king. He is unchanged, tall, stern, his gray beard neatly trimmed, his robes black and silver. But his eyes hold a darkness that Boromir has never seen before, a shadow that goes beyond mere despair. "My son," Denethor says, and his voice is cold. "You return empty-handed." Boromir kneels, as is proper. "I return alive, father, and I bring news." "News?" Denethor's lip curls slightly. "Tell me, then, where is the weapon you sought? Where is the thing that might save us?" Boromir takes a breath. The ring is on its way to be destroyed. It is carried by brave souls toward Mount Doom, and if they succeed, Sauron will fall. For a long moment, Denethor says nothing. Then he laughs, a bitter, hollow sound. "Destroyed? You would destroy the one thing that could save us. You would cast away power in the name of what? Wisdom. The council of wizards and elves who care nothing for the suffering of men. I would trust in the courage of those who bear it," Boromir says, his voice steady. "And I would stand here in Gondor and hold the line until their task is done." "Then you are a fool." Denethor rises from his seat, towering over his son. "I have seen what is coming, Boromir. I have looked into the stone. Armies beyond counting march on this city. Minas Morgul stirs. The corsairs of Umbar sail north. We are alone, and we will be crushed." "We are not alone," Boromir says, and he stands to meet his father's gaze. "Rohan will come. The heir of Isildur lives and will claim his throne. The free peoples rally. We have allies, father. We have hope." "Hope," Denethor spits the word like poison. "Hope is for those who have not seen what I have seen. Hope is the lie we tell ourselves before the end." But Boromir does not flinch. "Then I will carry that lie if it keeps our people fighting." The confrontation ends without resolution. Denethor turns away, dismissing his son with a wave, retreating to his private chambers and his palantir. And Boromir is left standing in the Hall of Kings, realizing that the battle for Gondor will not be won only on the Pelennor fields. It will be won here, in the hearts and minds of its leaders, in the choice between despair and defiance. He finds Faramir at Osgiliath, holding the ruins against constant assault. His brother's face lights up at the sight of him, and they embrace as they have not done since childhood. "I thought you dead," Faramir says simply. "I nearly was," Boromir replies, And in the days that follow, he tells his brother everything: the fellowship, the ring, his failure, his survival. Faramir listens without judgment, and when the tale is done, he only nods. "You are here now," he says. "That is what matters." Together, the sons of Denethor prepare Gondor for war. Boromir takes command of the city's defense, organizing the guard, reinforcing the walls, training every able-bodied man and woman who can hold a spear. His presence galvanizes the people. Where Denethor's despair cast a pall over the city, Boromir's return kindles a flame. The White City begins to roar for war, not in fear, but in fury. Yet even as the defenses rise and the army musters, Boromir cannot shake the feeling that something is watching him. At night, he dreams of the ring, and he wakes with its voice still echoing in his ears. He tells no one of these dreams. He buries them deep, beneath duty and honor and the desperate need to prove himself. But as Minas Tirith's banners rose, the eye of Sauron turned, not to Frodo, but to Boromir. War comes to Gondor not as a thief in the night, but as a hammer fall, sudden, overwhelming, inevitable. The warnings have been clear for weeks. Smoke rising from Minas Morgul, the roads from the east choked with enemy forces, the Anduin crossed by battalions of orcs and Easterlings and Haradrim. The net tightens around Minas Tirith, and all who stand upon the walls know that the storm is about to break. But this time, Gondor is not unprepared. This time, the city has its champion returned, and his presence has changed everything. Boromir stands atop the highest rampart of the 7th level, gazing out across the Pelennor fields as the sun sinks into the western mountains. Beside him, Faramir reviews the latest reports from the scouts. The enemy's numbers are staggering, far worse than even their grimmest estimates. Sauron has committed everything to this assault, holding nothing back, gambling that if Gondor falls, the free peoples will collapse like a house of cards. "They will be here by tomorrow night," Faramir says quietly. "Perhaps sooner." Boromir nods. He has made his preparations. The gates are reinforced, the catapults and trebuchets are loaded, the archers are positioned at every level of the city. He has sent word to Rohan, though he does not know if they will come in time. He has dispatched riders to the southern fiefs, calling every warrior who can be spared. And he has done something else, something that has caused whispers and doubt among the older counselors. He has opened the armories and armed the common people, not just the men, but anyone who can hold a weapon. Shopkeepers and craftsmen, women and elders, even youths barely old enough to wear armor. Gondor has always prided itself on its professional soldiery, its trained guard, its noble knights. But Boromir knows that this battle will not be won by pride. It will be won by sheer, stubborn refusal to yield. "Father calls it madness," Faramir says, "arming untrained civilians." "Father sees only defeat," Boromir replies. "I see people willing to fight for their homes." It is a rift that has only deepened since Boromir's return. Denethor has withdrawn almost entirely into his chambers, consulting the Palantir obsessively, emerging only to issue grim pronouncements of doom. The nobles of the city have begun to look to Boromir for leadership, not the steward. It is a dangerous shift, one that could fracture Gondor from within. But there is no time to address it now. The enemy will not wait for them to resolve their internal politics. That night, Boromir walks through the city, visiting the encampments where soldiers prepare for battle. He speaks with them, listens to their fears, shares what little news he can. They look at him with a mixture of awe and hope, as if his mere presence could turn the tide. He wishes he had their faith, He knows what is coming. He has fought orcs and uruks and worse. He has seen the darkness that Sauron commands, but he also knows that wars are not won by despair. In the early hours before dawn, as the sentries on the wall begin to call out warnings, Boromir climbs to the citadel one last time. He finds his father in the chamber of the White Tree, standing before the dead, lifeless tree that has stood there for centuries, a symbol of the kingship that never returned. "Do you see it?" Denethor asks without turning. The tree is dead, just as the line of kings is dead, just as Gondor will be dead before this week is out. "The tree has stood dead for centuries," Boromir says, "and yet Gondor endures." Endures. Denethor turns and his eyes are hollow, haunted. Is that all we are now? A dead tree that refuses to fall? Boromir steps closer. "Father, I need you. The city needs you. Not your despair, but your strength. You are the steward of Gondor. You have held this realm together through decades of war. Do not abandon it now." For a moment, something flickers in Denethor's face, something that might be the man he once was before the Palantir consumed him. But then it is gone, replaced by cold certainty. "I have seen the end, my son. I have looked into the stone and I have seen Sauron's victory. There is no escape. There is no hope. All we can choose is how we meet the darkness." "Then I choose to meet it with a sword in my hand," Boromir says. "And I will stand on the walls of this city until the last stone falls." He leaves his father there, alone in the shadow of the dead tree, and descends to the gate. The army is assembled, tier upon tier of soldiers stretching down through the levels of the city. Boromir mounts his horse and rides along the front ranks, and his voice rings out over the assembled warriors. "Men of Gondor, sons and daughters of the West, today we face the greatest army that Mordor has ever sent against us. They come to break our walls, to burn our homes, to snuff out the last light of the free peoples. They believe we will falter. They believe we will fall. Let us show them the truth." A roar rises from the army, echoing off the white stone, a sound of defiance and fury. Boromir raises his sword, and the sunlight catches the blade, blazing like a star. "For Gondor! For Gondor!" The cry comes back 1,000 voices strong, and the battle begins. The forces of Mordor strike the Pelennor fields like a black tide. Orcs and trolls, siege towers and battering rams, thousands upon thousands of twisted forms pouring across the plain. But Gondor's artillery answers with fire and stone, and the enemy's first wave breaks against the outer wall like water against a cliff. Boromir commands from the gate, his presence felt everywhere, his orders clear and decisive. He fights like a man possessed, cutting down any enemy that breaches the wall, rallying defenders where the line threatens to break. Faramir leads sorties from the lower levels, striking at the enemy's flanks, then retreating before they can be overwhelmed. Together, the brothers turn the siege into a grinding, bloody stalemate. But Sauron has more. He always has more. On the second day, the Nazgûl come, riding their fell beasts, their shrieks splitting the air and breaking the courage of mortal men. Boromir sees soldiers fall to their knees, overcome by terror, and he knows that no amount of bravery can stand against the despair the ringwraiths bring. He calls for arrows, for catapult fire, anything that might drive them back. But the Nazgûl are relentless, diving again and again, scattering the defenders. And then, just as hope begins to waver, a horn sounds from the north. Not the horn of Gondor, but a different sound, deep and clear, the horn of Rohan. The cavalry of the Riddermark has come, 6,000 riders strong, led by King Theoden himself. They crash into the rear of the enemy's army like a hammer, and the orcs reel before them. Boromir sees the charge from the walls, and for the first time in days, he allows himself to believe that they might survive this. He orders the gates opened, and the men of Gondor pour out to join the Rohirrim on the field. The battle becomes a maelstrom of steel and blood, Gondor and Rohan fighting side by side, driving the enemy back toward the river. But victory comes at a terrible cost. Theoden falls beneath the shadow of the Witch King's beast, and it is only the intervention of a small figure, Eowyn, the king's niece, disguised as a rider, that saves the day. She and the hobbit Merry bring down the Witch King, fulfilling an ancient prophecy. The Nazgul's death sends a shockwave through the enemy ranks, and they begin to falter. It is in this moment of triumph that Aragorn arrives, coming up the Anduin with the fleet of Umbar, the black sails now bearing the banner of the king. He has gathered the southern armies, the dead men of Dunharrow, and brought them north to Gondor's aid. The city is saved. But as the battle draws to a close and the enemy flees back toward Mordor, Boromir stands amid the carnage and realizes something. Aragorn has come as a king, not as a ranger. He has claimed his birthright, rallied the people, fulfilled the prophecies. And where does that leave Boromir? Where does that leave Gondor's stewards who have ruled for 1,000 years? He finds Aragorn on the field, tending to the wounded, and their eyes meet across the bloodied grass. There is recognition there, respect, even gratitude. But there is also an unspoken question. What comes next? Boromir kneels before Aragorn, as he did not do in Lothlorien, as he did not do even when the Fellowship was whole. He kneels, and he offers his sword. "Gondor is yours, my lord. The line of kings has returned." Aragorn takes the sword, then hands it back. "Rise, Boromir, son of Denethor. Gondor is ours to defend together. I will need your strength, your counsel, and your courage in the days ahead." It is not the ending Boromir imagined. It is not the triumph he sought when he left for Rivendell all those months ago. But it is honest, and it is real, and it is enough. Almost. Because even now, even in victory, a small voice whispers in the back of Boromir's mind. The ring is still out there, carried by hobbits toward Mordor. The war is not over, and if the ring falls into Sauron's hands, all of this, every life lost, every wound suffered, will have been for nothing. He looks east, toward the dark line of mountains where Mount Doom burns, and he wonders if he will ever be free of the ring's shadow. Victory, yet victory hollowed by corruption. The armies of the West stand at the Black Gate. It is a desperate gambit, a final throw of the dice. Aragorn, now revealed as the rightful king of Gondor, has led a force of 7,000 men to the very doorstep of Mordor, not to conquer, but to distract. Somewhere far to the north, beyond sight and knowledge, Frodo and Sam climb the slopes of Mount Doom, bearing the ring toward the fires that forged it. The armies at the gate are bait, drawing Sauron's eye away from his own land, giving the hobbits their one slim chance. Boromir stands in the vanguard, his armor dented and scarred, his sword notched from the battle of the Pelennor fields. Beside him are the warriors of Gondor, the riders of Rohan, the sons of Elrond, and Aragorn himself, tall and grim beneath the banner of the White Tree. They are outnumbered 100 to 1. They know they will not leave this place alive, but they have come nonetheless. The gate opens, and the lieutenant of Barad-dûr rides forth, the mouth of Sauron, a living man twisted by long service to the Dark Lord, his face hidden behind a cruel helm. He carries tokens meant to break their spirits: Frodo's mithril coat, Sam's sword. Proof, he claims, that the hobbits have been captured, that the quest has failed. Aragorn refuses to accept it. He takes the mithril coat and the sword and holds them close, but he does not despair. Even if this were true, he says, his voice ringing out over the assembled host, we would not yield. We will fight, and we will die if we must, but we will not bow to the Dark Lord. The mouth of Sauron laughs, a sound like metal grinding on stone, and withdraws. And then the gate opens fully, and the armies of Mordor pour forth. The battle is chaos. There are too many enemies, too few defenders. The lines buckle and strain, held together only by sheer determination and the refusal to break. Boromir fights as he has always fought, fiercely, without hesitation, his sword a blur of silver in the darkness. He kills orcs and trolls, cleaves through enemy ranks, rallies his men when they falter. But even as he fights, his thoughts are elsewhere. He thinks of Frodo and Sam climbing the mountain, bearing the weight of the world. He thinks of the ring, so close now to its destruction or its return to Sauron's hand. And he thinks of himself, of the man he tried to be, the man he failed to be, the man he might still become. The ring's voice has never truly left him. Even here, in the shadow of Barad-dûr, even amid the screams and the blood, he can hear it. A whisper, soft and insidious, threading through his thoughts. You could have saved them all, it says. If you had taken me, none of this would be necessary. Gondor would be strong. Sauron would be defeated. Your people would be safe. He grits his teeth and swings his sword, driving the voice back. But it returns, patient and relentless. You failed once. You will fail again. You are not strong enough. You are not good enough. You will watch them die, and you will know it is your fault. A troll looms before him, massive and monstrous, its club raised high. Boromir dodges the blow, but the impact sends him sprawling. He rolls to his feet, gasping, and sees the troll turning toward a group of Gondorian soldiers, defenseless and exhausted. He charges, roaring, and drives his sword into the creature's leg. The troll howls and swings at him, and this time he is not fast enough. The club catches him across the chest, and he is hurled backward, armor crumpling, ribs cracking. He hits the ground hard, and the world blurs. For a moment, he is back at Ammon Hen, arrows in his chest, dying beneath the trees. For a moment, he thinks this is where his story ends, where it was always meant to end. But then hands are pulling him up, voices shouting his name. Aragorn is there, and Legolas dragging him behind the line. "Stay down," Aragorn commands. "You've done enough." But Boromir shakes his head, coughing blood. Not yet. He forces himself to his feet, clutching his sword, and staggers back into the fray. He does not know why. Perhaps it is pride. Perhaps it is duty. Or perhaps it is something deeper, a need to prove once and for all that he is more than his failures. And then the world changes. A tremor runs through the ground, deep and powerful, and the armies pause mid-battle, looking around in confusion. The sky above Mordor begins to roil, clouds twisting into a vortex, and a sound like thunder rolls across the plain. The tower of Barad-dûr sways, and cracks appear in its black stone. The ring has been destroyed. Sauron's scream is silent, yet it echoes in the minds of all who stand on that field. The orcs and trolls falter, their will broken, their master gone. Some flee, some collapse, some turn on each other in mindless rage. The armies of the West, bloodied and exhausted, stare in disbelief as their enemy dissolves before them. Aragorn raises his sword, and his voice cuts through the chaos. The ring-bearer has succeeded. The day is ours. A cheer rises, ragged but real, and the soldiers of Gondor and Rohan surge forward, driving the remnants of Mordor's host back toward the gate. Boromir stands in the midst of the victory, his sword hanging loose in his hand, his vision swimming. He should feel triumph. He should feel joy, but all he feels is emptiness. The ring is gone. Sauron is defeated. The quest he once doubted, the plan he once opposed, has succeeded. And he realizes, with a clarity that cuts deeper than any blade, that he was wrong. Wrong to doubt, wrong to reach for the ring, wrong to believe that power was the answer. Frodo and Sam did what he could not. They carried the burden to the end, not because they were strong, but because they were willing to sacrifice everything. And Boromir, for all his strength, for all his courage, had been too proud to understand that. He sinks to his knees, the sword falling from his hand, and he weeps. Not from pain, though his body is broken. Not from grief, though he has lost much. But from the simple, overwhelming realization of his own failure and the grace that allowed him to live long enough to witness its redemption. Aragorn finds him there, kneeling on the battlefield, and places a hand on his shoulder. "You fought well, Boromir. You held the line when it mattered most." "I was wrong," Boromir says, his voice hoarse. "About everything." "You were human," Aragorn replies gently. "And you are still here. That is enough." But there is another path, another possibility. A darker thread of fate that might have been. What if, in those final moments at the Black Gate, when the mouth of Sauron brought forth the tokens of Frodo's capture, Boromir had not held faith? What if the sight of the mithril coat, the proof that the quest had failed, had broken something inside him? What if he had looked at Aragorn and seen not a king, but a pretender? What if he had looked at the armies arrayed against them and realized that there was no hope, no chance, no reason to continue this doomed march? What if, in that moment of despair, the ring's voice had spoken to him one last time, and he had listened? He would have left the host, slipped away in the chaos, riding hard for Mount Doom, driven by a single desperate thought. If the hobbits have failed, then someone else must try. Someone stronger. Someone who understands what is truly at stake. He would have found Frodo and Sam on the slopes of the mountain, struggling against Gollum, the ring burning between them. And he would have done what he tried to do at Am and Hen. He would have taken it. The moment his hand closed around the ring, everything would change. The power would surge through him, intoxicating and terrible, and he would see with perfect clarity how to use it. He would dominate Sauron's will, turn the Dark Lord's own armies against him, claim Mordor as his own. He would become the new Lord of the Rings, not for evil, but for good. For Gondor. For the world. This is what he would tell himself, even as the ring consumed him. He would return to Minas Tirith not as a captain, but as a conqueror. He would cast down his father, claim the throne, and rule with an iron fist. He would rebuild Gondor into an empire, stretching from the sea to the mountains, and all would bow before him. His brother Faramir would become his lieutenant or his prisoner. Aragorn would be hunted, branded a traitor. The Fellowship would become a tale of failure and betrayal. And in the end, centuries later, when the ring had hollowed him out and left only a shadow of the man he once was, Boromir, son of Denethor, would be remembered not as a hero, but as the lost steward, the man who sought to save the world and damned it instead. Two paths, two destinies. In one, redemption hard-won and grace undeserved. In the other, corruption complete and legend turned to nightmare. The truth is, we cannot know which path Boromir would have taken if he had lived beyond Am and Hen. We can only know what he chose in that final moment on the riverbank when he tried to take the ring and failed. And in that failure, he found redemption. But if he had lived, if he had carried that failure forward into the days ahead, the struggle would have been longer, harder, more uncertain. The ring's shadow would have clung to him, whispering always, offering him the power to do what he thought was right. And every day he would have had to choose again. Some legends end with glory, others with silence and shadow. Centuries pass. The Third Age ends and the Fourth begins, marked by the departure of the ring-bearers into the west and the slow fading of magic from Middle-earth. Gondor thrives under the rule of King LOTR, who reigns long and well, healing the scars of war and restoring the kingdom to its ancient glory. The white tree blooms in the court of the fountain, a living symbol of renewal. But memory is a strange thing. It shifts and changes with the years, worn smooth by the passage of time, until the truth becomes difficult to discern from the legend. In the archives of Minas Tirith, in the great library of the Citadel, there are 2 accounts of Boromir, son of Denethor. They are written by different hands in different years, and they tell different stories. The first account is written by a scribe who knew Boromir, who fought beside him on the Pelennor fields. It speaks of his courage and his strength, of how he returned to Gondor when the city needed him most, of how he rallied the people and held the line until the king arrived. It tells of his survival of the ambush at Amon Hen, of his struggle with the ring's corruption, and of his ultimate redemption at the Black Gate. It is a story of a man who failed and was forgiven, who lived long enough to see the world saved, and who died at last in his bed, old and honored, a hero of Gondor. The second account is written generations later by a scholar who never knew Boromir, who learned his tale from songs and half-remembered stories. It speaks of a man who was tempted by the ring, who reached for power and was consumed by it. It tells of how he left the Fellowship, how he pursued the ring into Mordor, how he seized it and became the Lost Steward, ruling over Gondor as a tyrant before vanishing into legend. It is a cautionary tale, a warning against pride and ambition, a ghost story told to children in the dark. Which account is true? Which is false? The scholars argue and the bards sing, and the truth remains elusive. Perhaps both are true in their own way. Perhaps Boromir's story exists in the space between them, a life lived on the knife's edge, a man who could have been either savior or destroyer, depending on the choices he made in each passing moment. In the taverns of Minas Tirith, old soldiers still drink to his name. They remember the day he returned, when hope kindled in the hearts of the people and the city roared with defiance. They remember his voice ringing out from the walls, his sword flashing in the sun, his refusal to yield even when all seemed lost. To them, Boromir is a hero, pure and simple, a son of Gondor who gave everything for his people. But in the quiet halls of the palace, in the chambers where the king's counselors meet and the affairs of state are decided, there are those who remember a different Boromir. They remember the tension between him and King LOTR, the way he struggled to accept the return of the kings after 1,000 years of stewards. Rule. They remember his bitterness, his doubt, the shadow that never quite left his eyes. They speak of him with respect, but also with caution, as one speaks of a sword that is sharp but flawed. And in the archives, locked away in a chest that few are permitted to open, there is a letter. It is written in Boromir's own hand, penned in the last year of his life, addressed to no one in particular. It was found after his death, tucked among his personal effects, and the king ordered it preserved. The letter is short. It reads, "I do not know if I have earned forgiveness, or if such a thing is even possible for one such as I reached for the ring, and though I did not claim it, I cannot undo the reaching. I lived, and in living I have tried to make amends. I fought for Gondor. I stood beside the king. I did what I could. but I will carry the shadow of that day until my last breath, perhaps longer. If there is a place beyond death where such things are accounted for, I can only hope that the good I have done will weigh against the evil I intended. I do not know. I can only hope. It is signed simply, Boromir, son of Denethor, captain of the White Tower. The letter has sparked centuries of debate among scholars. Some see it as proof of his redemption, a humble acknowledgement of his failures, and a testament to his efforts to atone. Others see it as evidence of lingering corruption, a man who never fully escaped the ring's influence, who remained haunted and broken until the end. But perhaps the truth is simpler than that. Perhaps Boromir was simply human. He was a man of great strength and great weakness, capable of both heroism and failure. He loved his city so fiercely that it blinded him. He feared the loss of his people so deeply that he was willing to risk anything to save them. And when he was tested by the One Ring, he failed, not because he was evil, but because he was mortal. And in a world where so much depended on the choices of immortals, of wizards and elves and ancient kings, perhaps that humanity was both his greatest flaw and his greatest gift. In the songs sung by the bards of Gondor, Boromir appears in 100 different forms. Sometimes he is the tragic hero, the warrior who died defending his friends. Sometimes he is the redeemed sinner, the man who fell and rose again. Sometimes he is the lost prince, the shadow king who might have been. The songs contradict each other, embellish and invent, until the man himself is buried beneath the myth. But every year, on the anniversary of the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, the people of Minas Tirith climb to the citadel and lay flowers at the base of the white tree. And some of them pause at a small monument nearby, a simple stone carved with a horn and a sword, and they whisper the name, Boromir. They do not remember the details. They do not know all the truths or all the lies, but they remember the sound of the horn, echoing across the fields, calling them to courage when all seemed lost. And in the end, perhaps that is enough. Somewhere in the halls of Mandos, or in whatever place awaits the souls of men beyond the circles of the world, Boromir, son of Denethor, rests. Whether he found peace there, whether he was forgiven or condemned, we cannot know. The Valor do not share their judgments with mortal chroniclers. But if the stories hold any truth, if the songs carry any echo of reality, then perhaps he is remembered not for his fall, but for the fact that he rose. Not for the ring he reached for, but for the sword he wielded in its stead. Not for the shadow that claimed part of his soul, but for the light that remained. In the end, it was not the ring that chose him, but the burden of being human. And perhaps, in a world forged by immortals and ruled by prophecy, that burden was the heaviest of all. Dear listener, this story ends, but many await. Subscribe so no tale escapes you.